Ready, Shag.
You're on.
All right. So welcome everybody to our first paired storytelling with the Sacramento Storytellers Guild and the Storytellers of San Diego. This is an event sponsored by the National Storytelling Network. It's called TELLABRATION, and also sponsored by the Storytelling Association of California. And our board decided to try to get storytellers all throughout California to have deeper connections. So one of our members, Marion Ferrante and Betsy Mosier, got together with the idea of putting on paired storytelling, where we set up a Northern California story swap group and a Southern storytelling swap group. So there are 6 events that are occurring this month through the Storytelling Association of California, and 2 of them have already occurred. This is the 3rd one. There'll be another one tonight and 2 on Sunday. So if you still want to hear more, you all registered. It's the same registration process. You just go to the other groups if you want to hear some more storytelling pairings. So we're very excited about this opportunity to do that. We also, in the idea of really getting storytelling throughout California, we do a few other events put on by the Storytelling Association of California. We have genre storytelling that happens once a month. It will be again on December 16th. So you can go on the website and find out about that event to register. We have another event called Stories in Living Color, where we pair storytellers together who work on stories and also dealing with the topics of social justice. So those are major events that we're putting on right now, and we're always looking for more. And if you're interested in joining the Storytelling Association of California, you can go to the website and become a member. TELLABRATION started in 1988 by J.R. Pinkerton. I want to read you what he said in terms of getting this whole idea together. This was with the National Storytelling Association. But here's what he says. In 1988, I dreamed of having a night each year when storytellers and communities get together and told stories to their families and friends. I called the idea TELLABRATION. Friends of storytelling liked the idea and began making it happen. Each year, the circle of friends has grown, and now TELLABRATION happens all across America as well as in other lands. I am the only man who had the idea. It is the friends of storytelling who have made the event a success. Hundreds of tellers telling to thousands of people. May what the tellers share bring joy to many people, and may the listeners come to know that through storytelling, we can draw closer together in peace and in friendship and in love. So with that, I would like to introduce a storyteller supreme from the Storytellers of San Diego, Fred Laskowski. He has put on TELLABRATION with their organization for 10 years. And he's been storytelling for 25 years. And I asked him for an interesting fact. And he told me that for 3 years, he hitchhiked throughout the United States and California through his checkered past. And he loves wilderness explorations and is ready to read the proclamation for TELLABRATION.
Thank you, Ed. And so, as Ed mentioned, there is an official proclamation for TELLABRATIONs that are happening all over the world at this very time. And so I'm simply just going to read that to you. TELLABRATION Proclamation. In the name of storytelling, Saturday, November 21st, 2020, is hereby proclaimed to be TELLABRATION, the worldwide event of storytelling. At this very moment, across 6 continents, in 40 states, and many countries, from Boise to Barcelona, Savannah to San Juan, Asia to Africa, West Virginia to the West Indies, and San Diego to Sacramento, Over 300 audiences are gathered for this spectacular storytelling event. And so without further delay, in joy and anticipation, let the stories begin.
Thank you so much, Fred. So we have 8 storytellers, 4 from each SWAT group. And we're going to start with the Sacramento Storytellers Guild. And our MC is one of our board members who has been a board member for the last 10 years and been involved with the Toastmasters organization for the last, 25 years, 30 years. I asked her for she's also part of a group that's interesting to me called Aesop's Fablers Club. Sounds very fascinating. Now I asked her for an interesting fact, and she said that she is known in the Toastmasters world as the dancing queen because whenever music rolls on, she just can't keep her feet still. She probably could give us a dance lesson today, so maybe we'll get lucky and have that happen. Please welcome Karen Bailey from the Sacramento Storytellers Guild.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited about being here and having this chance to be your MC. Our first storyteller is Angela James, and she is not only a storyteller and a poet, but she is steeped in the oral tradition as practiced by her family in the Caribbean. Her eclectic fusion of stories, music, and movement is designed to entertain, stimulate, and appeals to all audiences. Angela performs regularly all over Northern California at public and private events. She organizes storytelling events in the Sacramento area and has received several grants to promote the art of storytelling in schools. She is a certified teaching artist with Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission, a member of our Sacramento Storytelling Guild, a past member of Aesop Fablers Toastmasters Club, dedicated to storytelling, and she's also a member of the Phoenix Drum and Dance Company, a West African and Afro-Caribbean performing group, plus the Ladies of Night with the K-N-I-G-H-T, a poetry performance. Now, I asked each of our tellers to give me a little something that we may not know about each of them. But Angela didn't send me anything, but I'll tell you, as much as I'm known as the dancing queen for good old rock and roll and Toastmasters, Angela is my counterpart in Caribbean music. Once that Jamaican vibe goes, so do her feet, and she is moving all over the floor. She is exciting to watch. Today, Angela's telling us a story. The title is The Right Thing to Do, The Right Thing to Do, Angela James.
Yay.
Hi.
Yay.
No. Okay, so I am not Jamaican, please. Thank you. That's sort of like the Yankee and the Southerner thing. I'm from Trinidad, actually. But anyway, my story is I wanted to be a cowboy sweetheart. Oh, really? Actually, no. Many moons ago, I discovered a rodeo and I fell in love. I loved everything about the rodeo, the horses, the dirt, the manure, the little kids riding around on their sheep not falling off. The cowgirls with their long tresses going around the arena. I loved everything. The cowboys with their tight jeans and their big belt buckles. Actually, as much as I love the cowboys, I love the cowgirls because I wanted to be a cowgirl. I wanted to be the one there on that horse riding around the arena with the flag. I wanted to be the one with a rope catching those baby cows and telling them, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Don't you ever run away from me. Oh, I wanted to be the, oh, I just wanted to be a cowgirl. So I go out and I get all the requisite things. I get me some jeans. I get me some plaid shirts. I get me some of those uncomfortable pointy-toed cowboy boots. I would soak my feet in Epsom salts at night. Okay. And I just love the rodeo. Well, fast forward 25 years and my dreams of being a rodeo queen, they just vanished, you know. So I'm in Sacramento and I get a call from a friend and she's all excited. Guess what? Guess what she said? I'm like, no, this friend, you can't just say, what? When she says, guess what? No, you have to go through the 3 questions thing before she would put you out of your misery. So I'm like, theater tickets? No. A weekend getaway? No. A sugar daddy? No, she says. I got us tickets to the rodeo, the Folsom Rodeo. And I'm like, us? She's got a mouse in her pocket, but she's a really dear friend and I don't say anything. Rodeo day. Rodeo time comes. It was the 4th of July, 19 something something. I'm not going to tell you. The 4th of July, and I get prepared for the rodeo. I find my sexiest pair of Daisy Dukes. I pulled out my well-preserved cowgirl hat. I get me a little frilly low-cut blouse and I dig out those very uncomfortable shoes, cowboy boots. Okay, I make it to the arena. Oh, just in time. I find a spot, I park illegally, and I truck into that arena. Well, I see my friend up there. She is waving at me, and I'm like, man, she really got good seats, as she said. From up there, you could see all the way to South America without trying. Uh, so she's waving at me, and I'm looking up there, and little thought goes across my mind. How am I going to get up there? Now, in all my excitement and planning and anticipation, I didn't take one thing into consideration. I had a cast on one of my legs from my toes all the way to mid-thigh. And I had a pair of crutches to aid in my mobility. Well, I looked up there, okay, what shall I do? I could fly up there. Didn't have my wings that day. I could get on my butt and scoot up. That didn't work. The bleachers were full of hot dog eating people, all looking at me rather strange. Well, I could go home. Waved at her. I'm leaving. And about the same time, I see 2 young men coming down from the top of that stands. Ooh, they were a sight to behold. Mohawks, 6 inches, flaming red. They had enough body piercings with metal studs that would go off if they got within 1 mile of an airport. And they were headed at me. And as they got closer, I could see more details. They had swastikas and American flags tattooed into their skulls. They had tattoos all over their arms, oh, their little vests. When it swung open, you could see tattoos on their chest. They had those big belt buckles with skull and crossbones, and they were headed straight at me. Oof. I closed my eyes and I sent up a prayer to every deity that I had known about, read about. And then I heard a voice. My prayers had been answered. I opened my eyes, but my prayers weren't answered in the way I wanted. These two young men were standing right in front of me with a question. Do you need some help, ma'am? Ooh, I said yes, in a hurry. You probably would have done the same. And without further ado, the first one, I call him Thing One, he grabbed my crutches and handed them over to Thing Two. I said to myself, oh my God, they're gonna kill me. They're gonna kill me right here. Then he just grabbed my purse from off my shoulder and handed it to Thing Two. And I'm like, oh my God. They're gonna kill me. They're gonna rob me and they're gonna kill me right here in front of all these people. And he swept me up in his arms and I closed my eyes again. And Thing Two with the crutches like a divining rod, he headed up through the stands yelling, coming through, coming through. The crowd parted like it was Moses commanding the Red Sea. And we started that procession up those bleachers. You know, they say when you're going to die, you see your eyes, you see everything flash in front of your eyes. Well, I saw every little detail around me. I could hear the thump, thump, thump of the heart of the guy carrying me. I could see certain things. I can see the people who were not standing for the national anthem. I could see the one guy who was standing for the national anthem, and he had problems with his anatomy. He was holding his hat not over his heart, but over his crotch. Oh, well, anyway, we get to the top of the bleachers and I'm like, oh my God, they're going to throw me over. I don't ever want to go over those bleachers underneath. I know what's under there. There's garbage, there's popcorn wrappers and snow cone containers and used condoms. And there are rats. After the rat eat me, there wouldn't be anything left of me to have a memorial. They took me up and the guy with the crutches, he smacked aside the person who was sitting too close to my numbered seat, and Thing One deposited me next to my friend who was just looking at everything with her mouth open. They handed me my purse, they handed me my crutches, and then with a swift salute, the two of them took off, jumping over people, down the bleachers, and out of the arena. Well, even before they went out, you see the sun glinting on their metal pieces. They look like some sort of ghost, and the flaming red hair and the back of their little jackets that read white power. Well, I enjoyed the rodeo that day. I enjoyed seeing the little kids ride on their sheep and trying to stay on. I looked at all those cowgirls and their flags and doing all their roping and everything. Oh, I sent up a little sigh when the cowboys came out and tried to stay on the bulls. I enjoyed the songs, the smell, the songs of the carnival on the outside. And I sat there having a really good time. Oh, at the end of the rodeo, my friend asked me, did I know those two young men? Because she said, you know all kinds of strange people. Well, yeah, I do. I said, no, I didn't. She says, then, well, why did they help you up there? And I didn't have to think long before answering. I just said, oh, because they knew it was the right thing to do. And we left it at that. But as an aside to all of this, I do know how to ride a horse in my cowgirl dreams.
Yay.
Karen, I think I'm
Yes,
taking.
thank you. And now we're going to turn it over to the MC from San Diego. And they will be introducing their speaker. And I'm sorry, I do not have the name of the MC for San Diego.
Hi, I'm Mindy Donner. Thank you, Karen. And that was a terrific story, Angela. So I'm going to say just a little bit about Storytellers of San Diego before I introduce our first teller, David. Storytellers of San Diego was a loose association, or has been an association since the late 1970s. Recently, in the last 10 years or so, we've been a nonprofit in the state of California. And we have two different performances every month, and now they're virtual. One is actually a live Zoom, and both are on Thursday nights, and the other one is a previously recorded performance. Both are thematic, and if you want to know more, you can go to storytellersofsandiego.org, and I'll put that up in the chat a little bit later. I am welcoming David Schmidt, who is here in San Diego. He spends part of his time in Mexico City. He is a professional storyteller. He is a translator. He is a polyglot. He speaks 9 languages and has been to all at least 30 countries or more. And he's been collecting folklore from the far reaches of the southern mountains in Mexico to Egypt, to pubs in Ireland, and everywhere in between. David also is the author of a dandy book called Holy Ghosts, True Tales from a Haunted Christian College. And he can put that up in the chat as well, how to get hold of it. It's a collection of ghost stories from one of San Diego's oldest universities, which is Point Loma Nazarene University, home to the original Theosophists in San Diego. Without further ado, David, take it away.
They were one of those couples that was just fighting all the time. And like many of those couples do, they figured that the best way they could stop fighting was to have kids. So they did. They got pregnant. And finally, 9 months later, they were in the delivery room. You know, the father, he took some time off from his concrete business. He was one of the biggest concrete producers here in San Diego. And they were in the hospital, Scripps Mercy, here in San Diego. They were in the delivery room. They were waiting, and finally a detente from the fighting had finally come. The father, he's staring there, he's waiting, and he's looking, and he's watching, and then the boy comes out, and the father says, "Look at him! Oh, he's got a shock of red hair. He's just like my dad from Norway. We can name him Eric, like Leif Erikson. My dad's from Norway. It'll be perfect." What is that on his? What's that on his ankle? What is that? Is that a hand? And the mother says, "Yes, I told you it was twins. I told you I was having twins. You didn't tell me you were having twins. I told you, I sent you a text message. That doesn't count as telling me." And the doctor said, "Why are you fighting? It's supposed to be a joyous occasion." And that was the context into which those twins were born, Jacob and Eric. So Eric, he was the oldest by just a second. Eric was the one with that shock of red hair. And Eric, as they grew, Eric, he became daddy's boy. You know, when you're born into a family that conflictive, the battle lines get drawn. It's like a chess game. And so Eric was daddy's boy. And Eric, as they grew and grew, Eric, he played every sport known to man. He surfed here in San Diego. He was star quarterback once he got into high school. He was one of these guys who ate chili size at the diner. And when he grew older, he would drink Coors, and he would date the cheerleaders in high school. Now, Jacob, he was mama's boy. Jacob, he was one of those guys. He would date the girls. While Eric dated the cheerleaders, Jacob, he dated the girls who, the girls with the thick glasses, the girls who would walk around carrying books by Kurt Vonnegut. And Jacob, he always shaved his arms. He shaved his chest so he looked good at the gym. Jacob, he always wore Obsession by Calvin Klein. And he was mama's boy. Mom loved Jacob. Well, after high school, these two boys and the whole family, they went on one of their few vacations. You know, the dad, of course, he rarely would take time off from their family's concrete cement business. But they took a vacation. They went up to Big Bear and they went camping, and they were faced with the prospect of the two parents having to spend the whole weekend together without Wi-Fi, without distractions. And so they went up, and of course they started fighting. The fighting started, it didn't stop. They got up there, they set up their tents. And after a while, once the sun starts to go down, they realized Eric hadn't come back. Eric, that macho, big woodsman Eric, he hadn't come back. They said, where's Eric? And Jake said, well, who cares? He's gone somewhere. Because by this point, by high school, the two boys, they had taken on that rivalry into themselves. So Jake said, I'll go look for him. And Jake went out. He went out into the mountains. Finally, he found Eric. Eric had fallen down a ravine. He had fallen down. He was trapped. A rock had fallen onto him. His leg was broken. Jake, he finally found Eric. Eric said, Jake, you got to help me, brother. Help me. Look at me. I haven't had a drink of water for hours. I'm dying here. You got to help me out. Now, see, Jacob, by this point, Eric, he was stronger. He was manlier. But Jacob, he got shrewd. He got smart. You know, see, while Eric knew how to, beat Jacob up, Jacob could beat up Eric's soul. So Jacob, he became very shrewd. And Jacob looked at him and he said, yeah, I'll help you out. Jake, you got to help me out. Come on. Yeah, I'll help you out, but you got to give something to me. What are you talking about? Look, I got a water bottle right here. It's right here. I'll give it to you. You got to give something to me. Your car keys. What? Your truck. Dad gave it to you when you turned 16. Dad didn't give me any truck. Give me your car keys, and I'll give you this water bottle. Jake, what are you talking about? Come on. If you want to get out of this ravine, you want to get out of here? Help me out. Well, Eric gave him those car keys. He let him have the car, and Jake carried him back to the campsite. But things weren't the same after that. That rivalry just deepened and deepened. And as they got older, the rivalry got deeper. Well, eventually, Eric, he was Dad's favorite, so he inherited the concrete business. And Dad eventually got diabetes, too many chili fries, too many beers. And Dad, once he got into his mid-70s, he got diabetes. They had to put him into a home, actually. Eric was set to inherit that business. And one day, Jacob was talking to his mom, and his mom said, you're going to want to start a family someday, too. Jacob said, yeah. Well, you should be taken care of. So mom explained to Jacob, she said, you know, if that inheritance, if that business went to you instead of your brother, you'd be taken care of. Jake said, well, yeah, dad's in the home though. I mean, he's lost his eyesight by now to diabetes, but mom, he can still smell me. Mom said, no, Jake, look, here's what you do. You take a shower, wash off all your cologne, wash off that Obsession by Calvin Klein. Wash it all off. And then go to the gym, get nice and sweaty so you smell like your brother. And then you go to my cousin in West Hollywood. He can give you a fake red beard, just like your brother Eric's. He can give you some fake arm hair because you shave your arms. I know that. He'll give you all of that. You go up, let your dad touch that fake arm hair. Let him touch your beard, and he'll think that you are Eric. Well, Jake said, Mom, why would you do this? Why are you helping me take the will from my brother? He said, because you're my special boy. So he did. He went to that home, and he fooled his father, and he got his father to sign that will over to him, Jacob. But the thing is, Eric got home early from the surfing tournament. He was in Maui. He was at a surfing tournament. He got home early, and Eric came back, and he found that will. Mom was home sipping a mimosa with breakfast. Eric found the will. And Eric looked at it and said, what is this? I'm leaving it to Jake. What is this? Son of a... And he pulled out a pistol. He pulled out this pistol he always carried. He said, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. And he ran off. And so Mom went and she found Jake at the coffee shop he always went to. She said, Jake, you need to leave. You have to get out of the country. You need to look, I have a half brother. He owns a winery in Chile. You need to leave the country. You don't know. Eric, he's got connections here. You need to leave the country. Go to South America. Go to Chile. Go to my half brother's winery down in South America. I can't protect you, Jacob. I can't protect you from this. Go, leave, stay there until it's safe. So he did. Jacob, he took a flight to South America. He went to Chile, to the southern part of Chile, down to that winery where his uncle owned everything, and he worked there. It wasn't easy. He didn't have any Obsession by Calvin Klein. He didn't have any cologne. He couldn't even shave his arms anymore. And he lived in these cinder block rooms where all the other laborers, most of them were from Bolivia. They'd migrated to Chile. He lived there in those rooms, and he worked. He got up before dawn every day, and he went out, and his fingers just blistered and they bled. Every now and then he would slip off to an internet cafe and he would check to see if there was any email from his mother. Nothing. Now he worked for a year, 2 years, 3 years. He learned Spanish. Eventually, his uncle didn't pay him, but what could Jacob do? His family. And he didn't have any other option. After a few years, he met a woman. Sorry, I see my speaker is.
You're muted.
Testing.
You're fine.
Okay. Okay, my apologies. I don't know what happened. So after a few years, Jacob met a woman, Remedios. And that Christmas, when a priest came to do Christmas Mass with all the laborers at the winery, Jacob and Remedios were married. And they still lived in that little cinder block room at the winery. They lived together. Jacob still hadn't been paid. After 7 years, they were sitting around talking. Remedios, she said, Jaco, por favor, escúchame. Your uncle, he's your family. He hasn't paid you in 7 years? Jacob said, there's nothing else I can do. You have to go ask him. So after 7 years, Jacob decided to go talk to his uncle at last. He went and he talked to his uncle. He said, Tío, patron, listen, it's been 7 years here. I haven't been paid. Please, don't you think it's time that I got some money? Isabel said, yeah, I'll give you some money, but you have to give something to me. Your wife, she's beautiful. One night. Give me one night with your wife. Jacob, I know what you did up there. I know you're in trouble. What else are you going to do? Well, so Jacob, he went back to the room that he shared with Remedios. He said, we need to leave. We have to leave now. And they did. They ran. They didn't even have time to. Neither of them had passports or anything, no documents, but they left. They managed to take cheap buses. They crossed the Chilean border. They went north. They crossed all the way through South America, through Central America. They made it to the Mexican border. They crossed the Usumacinta River, crossed in a floating raft on the Usumacinta. They crossed all through Mexico, across atop the freight train known as La Bestia, the Beast. They made it to the northern border of Mexico, and they crossed through the desert, through the Sonoran Desert, and they made it all the way to Arizona, where the concrete factory that Eric had now inherited, they made it there. So Jacob, he took the last $20 bill that he had hidden in his sock. He put Remedios up in a hotel. He said, I need to talk to my brother. That's the only option I have right now. And he went. And he walked all night across the desert to where that concrete factory in Yuma, Arizona was. And as the sun was peeking up over the horizon, he walked up to that factory. And he saw all the men walking towards him, coming down the hill from that factory, all the men with those dark blue security uniforms, all of them carrying shotguns. And Jacob, he said, it's over. It's over. This is it. And he saw Eric walking behind the men. He had that big, long, red beard. Eric is walking down behind the men. And Jacob, he just fell to his knees. And Eric walked up to him. And Jacob, he fell to his knees, exhausted from that journey across the entire continent. And he said, Eric, just do it. Just do it. Just kill me. I deserve it. I know I stole everything from you. I stole it. I deserve it. Just kill me now. And he closed his eyes and he waited for that gunshot. And it didn't come. And he felt a hand on his cheek. And Eric lifted him up, took him up, made him stand up. And Eric looked at him. Eric said, Jake, my mother is your mother. My father is your father. Everything that happened between them, that's them. That's between them. That's not us. That's not who we are. Everything that happened between us, that's behind us now. I'm your brother. I'm always going to be your brother. Eric said, Jake, you're family. You're my brother. Jacob looked at him and he said, hearing you say that is like hearing the voice of God. Well, Jake, he brought Remedios in to live with Eric. They all moved into an extra guest house that Eric had. They moved in there. They had kids together. Jacob and Eric, they were compadres for each other's kids. And they lived together with each other's families. And they lived together forever. And that first child that Jacob and Remedios had with Eric, they named that child the Mapuche Chilean word for home, because finally, after all those years, Jacob had found home. He had found him family. He was not going to let it go. Jacob and Eric.
Karen, go ahead.
I know, I can't.
Our next person. Thank you.
Okay, there I am. Sorry.
No worries.
I don't know what happened. Our next speaker from Sacramento, most of you are familiar with him, is Ed Lewis. And Ed is a storytelling groupie. He is president this year of our Sacramento Storytelling Guild. He's a member of the Sacramento Storytelling Association of California, and he's one of the Pacific liaisons for the National Storytelling Network. Ed is a retired early childhood education professor and has taught storytelling classes for teachers. Plus, he has had the good fortune of telling stories to children throughout the world during his summer vacations. He has been sharing personal stories and tall tales, I can tell you, to many adult audiences since 1996. Now, I really am eager to share his unusual fact that he shared with me. Ed lived in a cave in the Canary Islands for 6 months. Yes, 6 months. Also, he backpacked and boated the entire Amazon River. So he has an abundance of stories he can always share. So it is my pleasure to welcome Ed Lewis. Lessons learned, Ed Lewis.
All right, thank you so much. I wanted to let everyone know, if you want to leave a message for any of the storytellers, you can just go in the chat room and do that. There once was an old lady whose eyes were dim, her ears dull of hearing, and her mind wandered to places only she was familiar with. Her family would often find her hitchhiking, naked, along the Klamath River in Happy Camp, California, south of the Oregon border. Her daughter and son-in-law got increasingly disturbed by her behavior, and they didn't understand what Alzheimer's was back in the late 50s and 60s. So they asked the other family members what they could do, and the aunts and uncles involved with their own personal issues, and they just saw her as a family embarrassment. And they said, put the old coot in a rest home north of Seattle where she grew up, and we'll see her when we can. And that's what they did. I, on the other hand, saw my grandmother as a wise, playful woman who took care of me when I was a young child. My fondest memories are bedtime. She would walk me down the dark hallway. She'd open the door to my bedroom, turn on the light, and tell me to stand in that doorway and everything was going to be okay. She entered the doorway, she went over to the bed, and then with her magic powers, she slayed all the dragons and alligators that were under that bed. And then she came back to me, picked me up, laid me down in the bed, and told me stories of fanciful and faraway places. As I was getting more tired, she would then sing what is my favorite song today. And many of you know that. And if you know the song, please hum along or sing along with me. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Grandma's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird won't sing, Grandma's gonna buy you a diamond ring. And if that diamond ring gets lost, Grandma's gonna buy you a looking glass. And about that time, my eyes would shut and I would fall asleep. She would gently kiss my cheek and I would hear the pitter patter of the rain on the roof as it often happened in Seattle, Washington. Well, she was put in that rest home, and it was a cheap, run-down, dirty place. And I visited her there about 2 months after she had been there. I was 18 years old. And they ushered us into this dimly lit room. It was the family room. There was no pictures. There was a television in the corner. It wasn't really a place where anybody should be living. But they ushered us in, and this time her Alzheimer's had taken her mind to where she didn't recognize anybody. But I sat with her, and her eyes glazed over, and she looked up at the ceiling, and she started talking about things that I had no idea about. But I still was transported back by her voice to those younger times and the love that she had given me. It seemed like an hour went by, and then all of a sudden, her eyes cleared up. She peered deeply into my soul, and she said, "Eddie, don't ever put your parents in a death camp like this. This is no place for the living, and I won't be living much longer." Then her eyes glazed over, she looked at the ceiling and went off to her own world. Well, 2 weeks later, she died peacefully in her sleep. And the family had almost like a hushed, guilt-ridden funeral. Now, but I remember the many lessons that my grandmother taught me. And in 2012, when my father got Alzheimer's, my mother tried to take care of him, and everything was going fine, except, he was losing his short-term memory slowly. His long-term memory was fine. Physically, he was in really great health. But the problem he had was that he would hide things at night: a comb, a credit card, a wallet, a boot. And he'd wake up in the morning and couldn't find them, and he'd be in a rage. The Mexican gardeners had stolen them, or somebody had stolen them. And one day he grabbed my mother and he shoved her against the wall, and he said, "You know who stole that. You go get my boot right now." And that was all she could really handle. She was afraid. So we did find a really nice, well-lit activity assisted living program near my mother, so she could, which she did. And everything was going okay for a while, but then he still started hiding things. He'd wake up in the morning, he'd be in a rage, he'd yell at the hired maid service and the people taking care of him. He'd go down to the front room and he'd be screaming until somebody found his poop or comb or whatever. Eventually, they said, "We're going to have to put him in the lockup ward. We just can't keep him like that." And I thought about my grandmother, and I realized that I needed to take care of him. So I brought him 80 miles away to my house in Davis, California. And for the next 3 years, with the help from family, friends, and the last 6 months, hospice workers, and we cared for him. He totally lost his short-term memory, but his long-term memory was fine. So I heard the family stories over and over. My son lived with us the first year. I hired him before he went away to college. And it was a great thing that he was there, because he was going to the Culinary Institute of America, and he had studied 1 year in a community college for a chef's certificate. So I had the best meals. And he had the greatest idea to get a rescue dog for my father. And we happened to find one that was exactly like the dog he had that he didn't remember. So I would take him once a week over to see my mother. And his old dog, Susie, would run up to him and be so excited. And my dad would just love the attention, although he didn't remember her name. We asked my dad what he wanted to name the new rescue dog. And he thought for a minute, he said, "Oh, how about Susie?" So we had another Susie. And it was the best thing for him, because he would take the dog out for a walk. And after about 2 weeks of going with him, I put scarecrows in the front yard. go on that walk by himself and come back and see the scarecrows and remember that this is where he lived. Susie was very smart though, because he would take her for a walk, and maybe an hour later, she'd look at him and go, he would go, oh, you want to go for a walk? Take her out. So probably he went on walks 6 blocks or so, 10 times a day. All the neighbors knew him well. Everything was going fine. Well, that lasted for 2.5 years or so. And then the last 6 months, he developed some heart issues and was pretty much homebound at that point. And the hospice workers were just amazing. You know, if you ever want to support an organization, hospice is an amazing place. They taught me a lot about how to care for him. Well, on the day of his passing, my son was there. We knew that this was coming. And so we dressed him up in his finest suit. We combed his hair. We held his hands. And just like his mother did when he was a young child, we sang him his favorite lullaby. Join me if you want to do that. Hush. Little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird won't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. And if that diamond ring gets lost, Grandma's gonna buy you a looking glass. And we did sing the entire song. Of course, it ended with, and you'll still be the sweetest little baby in town. And shortly after that, I love you, Grandma Sadie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed. Our next teller is from San Diego, and she is Dr. Almena Mozon. And she works in the world as a clinical psychologist and a life coach, and she brings that empathy, poise on stage to our virtual stage. She'll bring both empathy and poise tonight. She loves telling stories from the African diaspora, and sometimes she tells stories with her husband, O.J. Mozon. Almena, take it away.
Thank you. Lungile was the most beautiful girl in her village. People said it was not only the beauty in her face, but the beauty that shone from within that made her special. She had a kind heart, and she was always careful to do things that would help out her parents. She always helped out others in the village as well. All the girls in the village loved going down to the lake to swim with Lungile. They would play water sports, and they would make jokes, and they would laugh and have such a great time. The people always teased the girls that they were thinking that if they stayed in the water with Lungile long enough, they would absorb some of her beauty. More than anything else in the world, Lungile loved birds. She loved their beautiful plumage, and she loved the way they took flight. One day, while the girls were out looking for firewood and picking wild berries, they were just having a great time, and they were joking to each other. They'd say, oh, look at your mouth. You have eaten so many berries. Your mouth is purple. And another would say, your mouth is so purple, it's almost black. Now, suddenly they realized that Lungile was no longer with them. So they went to look for her, and they found her in a clearing with her arms outstretched. And she was looking up in the sky, and she was like she was lost in a dream, and she was whispering and singing little sweet bird songs. And they said to her, Lungile, What's wrong with you? Aren't you satisfied just to be the most beautiful girl in the village? Do you want to be a bird too? And Lungili said, no, no, I'm happy being just who I am. I love being a girl called Lungili, but I so admire the birds and their flight, and their songs just warm my heart and fill my heart with joy. Well, as time went on, Lungili became even more beautiful. And suddenly there were lots and lots of young men coming to her door to ask her parents' hand in marriage. They were all coming from all over, coming for her hand in marriage. And one day, this rich young man came to the village. And as he strode up to her door, he walked with confidence. His clothing was made of the finest materials. And he and his entourage came into Lungili's home with gifts for Lungili's parents. The girls all thought surely he will be the one who Lungili will say yes. But he came out, his head was bowed, his shoulders drooped, and he was so disappointed because Lungili said, no, not this one. The next man came and he was so beautiful. In fact, he was so beautiful it made the girls' knees weak. And he strode up and they said, surely she will pick him because his beauty matches her own. But when he came out, his head was bowed, his shoulders drooped, and he was disappointed because Lungili said, no, not this one. The third man came and he was he was he was just so humble and he was kind and he promised Lungili's parents that he would love her forever no matter what. And they thought surely this is the one who will win her heart. But again, Lungile said, no, not this one. And he left with his head bowed and his shoulders drooped as he left the home. One after another, the men came, and each one, Lungile said, no, not this one. All the girls started saying, Lungile, you have to stop being so choosy, or suddenly no one will even want to marry you. Lungile did not seem at all bothered by this prospect. But one by one, all of the girls in the village were getting married, and Lungile was left behind. But it didn't bother her still. She used this time to learn from the women of her village. She made beautiful beads and they taught her how to make wonderful baskets and grass mats. And she learned the stories of her people. And her father came to her and said, Lungile, can't you find at least one man who you can marry? And she said, no, Papa, I'm waiting for the man of my dreams. You see, he came to me in a dream one night and he said that when the time was right, he would send a bird to beckon me and let me know that it's time for me to marry him. And her father said, what, you can hear and understand what birds say? She said, no, but I just know that if I wait, the right man will come along. I will have my dream man. Her parents didn't know what to do with her, but her mother said to her father, let's wait for a while. Let's wait for her to find her bird husband and just wait and let her wait for a while and see what happens. So Lingili kept going and helping the people in her village. And one old woman was heard to say, that Lungili is not without purpose. Her beauty is so special. I can I can just bet you, mark my words, something very special is going to happen to her. And she continued to grow more and more beautiful, and even the birds seemed to stop and admire her. And as that woman said, not very long afterwards, early one morning, a bird came to Lungili and it sang a sweet song to her. Lungile, hurry up. The man of your dreams is waiting for you at the lake. Woza Lungile, Woza Lungile. So Lungile jumped out of bed and she got dressed as quickly as she could, and she hurried down to the lake. And as she ran down to the lake, she kept hearing the song and singing it to herself. Hurry, Lungile, Woza Lungile. The man of your dreams is waiting for you at the lake. Woza Lungile, Woza Lungile. Hurry up, hurry up. The man of your dreams is waiting for you. And when she saw him, it took her breath away. He was just as special as she had imagined and as she had hoped. And when he saw her, he opened his arms and ran to meet her. And the birds were there. There were hundreds and hundreds of birds all around this beautiful man. There were big birds and small birds, birds in the trees, birds in the air, birds in the lake. And when they saw him running to Lungile, they burst out in a beautiful song and they embraced. And as they embraced, the birds rose up into the air. And as they rose up, feathers were falling, a beautiful rainbow of colors of these feathers falling. And the women of the village ran out, ululating. Come see, Lungile is about to get married. Come see. And they reached down and they picked up all of these beautiful feathers and they took them back to their homes and made a beautiful wedding dress for Lungile. And Lungile's family, her parents, made a beautiful feast because they were so happy that Lungile had made such a beautiful match. They were married that day, and Lungile and her man were so much in love. And after they were married, Lungile went off to his village. And when they had children, their children knew that the birds were always welcome in their home. The birds would teach them their beautiful songs, and they would love each other forever. And here I rest my story.
Thank you so much for an excellent story. We are going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will be back with 4 more amazing stories. Thank you so much. So Karen, please come on and introduce the next storyteller.
All right, I think I'm unmuted.
You are?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All righty, very good. Well, our
Nice.
next story. Oh, are we okay? Our next storyteller is Linda Kennedy. And Linda has been telling stories for over 30 years. Everything from folk tales to personal tales. She is a member of the Foothill Storytelling Guild and the Sacramento Storytelling Guild, also the State Association and the National Storytellers Network. Warning, if given a moment, she will fill it up with a story as quick as a wink. Now, her unusual thing that she shared, which isn't really that unusual if you know Linda, she has been the MC for the open telling contest in the Sierra Storytelling Festival. And she's been doing that for the past 11 years. But what you may not know is at any given time, she may get the audience going in a sing-along. And I have not had that pleasure, but I'm sure it's a lot of fun. Linda's speech title is A series of unfortunate events. A series of unfortunate events. Linda Kennedy.
Long ago, a little boy climbed up on a rock, and the rock said to him, "Shall I tell you a story?" And the little boy said, "What is a story?" And the rock replied, "Everything that has happened up until now." And this is one of my up until now stories. It was a great morning. Tom and I had decided this was going to be the perfect day to finally finish the painting project for the master bathroom. Now he decided that he would go down and get the ladder and the big gallon of paint and take it upstairs. And I would get the smaller things, such as the roller pan, some newspapers for the floor, and the brushes and masking tape, things like that. And he went on up with the ladder and the paint. But when he came down, he said, "You know, it's a little chilly up there. The paint may not dry. We're going to have to warm up the room." So he went down to the basement and got our radiator portable heater and carried it up the stairs and plugged it in. When he came back down, he said, "We'll need to give it about 30 minutes. And I said, "Fine, I need to gather my stuff. I need to put on my painting clothes." And then the phone rang. And he said, "Uh-oh," he says, "I have to go show some real estate. Now you can wait till I get home, or you can go ahead and do it without me." And I said, "Piece of cake. I'll just go ahead and do it." So after about 30 minutes, I gathered up those things I needed, and I went upstairs to the master bathroom. Now the master bathroom was sort of a big open space off the end of the bedroom, but at the end of the open space, there was a door, and another past there was another smaller little bathroom, about 4 feet wide and about 7 feet long. Had a toilet, a couple of towel bars, and an opening into a walk-in shower. Not much to do in there. When I got up there, the heater was right there where the door was, and I could feel how warm that little bathroom was. I took my newspapers, my paint pan, my masking tape. I set it down on the toilet seat, and I started to pull that heater out of the room. But is right. My rump bumped the door and slammed it shut with me inside. And when I turned around is when I noticed my sweet husband had removed the doorknob to make it easier for me to paint the bathroom door. Well, I went over to the door and I stuck my hand in that opening and I pulled on it and I tried to get it to open and it couldn't. And I said, "Fine, now I am stuck in the bathroom. What am I going to do? I guess I'll go ahead and paint the bathroom." Now, mind you, I am now in this space of 4 by 7 with a toilet, with a heater, a step ladder, all the other stuff that I brought up, and the can of paint. So I pushed everything down to one end and I grabbed the newspapers for the floor. But then I thought, aha, in case he does not get back in time, I will need some reading material. So I opened up the newspaper and I sorted out the things I might want to read. I found the puzzle page. I found book reviews. I found movie reviews. And I found that one section that had like Miss Manners and Ann Landers. And I said, okay, I'll take that. And then Auto Mall and want ads and that kind of stuff went on the floor. So I put the papers down on one end of the floor. Then I moved the heater, the ladder, the paint, and all of the other little things to the other end. I got the paint and I got the papers down on that end of the floor. And then I got the ladder back down to the other end, poured the paint into my pan, put it on the shelf at the top of the ladder, and up I went. Well, I made about 2 or 3 stripes with that paint down the wall when I felt that fine mist of paint landing on my face. And I knew then it was getting on my clothes and I had not changed yet into my paint clothes. So I stripped down into my underwear. Now listen, friends, I only get 10 minutes to tell this story, so you get 5 seconds to process that vision out of your head now. Okay, let's go. So I got down and I put my clothes down over there in the shower, and I went back up the ladder and I started painting. And I did about a couple of swatches. I had to get down, move the heater, move the ladder, move the paint, went back up and down, came down, moved the ladder, moved the heater, moved the paint. And I felt, oh, the fumes of that paint were really getting to me, and there was no ventilation. So I said, oh, geez, I need fresh air. And then I saw it, that little porthole to life where the doorknob had been. I squatted down and I went, and I inhaled fresh air. So every time I came down that ladder, I moved the ladder, moved the heater, moved the paint, filled those lungs with fresh air, and I got around the room. Finally, I said, thank heaven I don't have to paint the ceiling. We're leaving it white. Oh my God, what did Tom do? While he was up there with that ladder, he had loosened the little screws on the light fixture, dropped it down just a little bit, and he had painted at least 5 inches with the new color out to make it easier for me to paint the ceiling. All right, back down to the end of the little room, moving all the stuff out of my way, more paint in the pan. I go up the ladder and I start painting overhead. And after about 2 rolls, I feel that familiar faint paint hitting my face, but now I know it's getting in my hair. So I come back down the ladder and I think for a minute. Then I remembered when I was teaching kindergarten, we had fun making triangle paper hats when we were studying shapes, the circles, the rectangles, the squares, and triangles. So I went through that little reserve of newspapers that I had, and I flipped through to see what I could do without. I wanted that puzzle page. I want the book reviews. I'll need the movie reviews. Aha, Ann Landers. She probably has some type of an article on how much fun it is to do things with your husband. I grabbed that piece and I folded me a great big triangle hat, and I put it down over my head and I went back up the ladder. I went like this one time and that darn hat fell off down to the floor. So now I have come down the ladder and I picked up the hat and I looked around and I saw the masking tape, that bright blue painter's tape. I put my hat on and I taped that hat to my forehead. I went back up the ladder and I painted. I moved the ladder, I moved the heater, I moved the can, and I painted. And I moved the ladder, I moved the heater. And it wasn't long before I was done. So I said, whew, good job, Linda. I sat down and I read the book reviews. Some were good, some not so. I read the movie reviews. I'll see that one, not a chance on that one. Then I got the puzzle page. Oh boy, I love a good crossword puzzle. I didn't have a pencil, I didn't have a pen. I started to think about how hard could it be to memorize your answers and know where the letters went. And that lasted all of 3, 4, 5 seconds. And I said, nah, I'll just sit here and relax, maybe meditate a little and wait for Tom. By and by, I heard that familiar voice from downstairs. Hi, hon, I'm home. And I got down to my little porthole of life and I yelled, Tom, come upstairs. And he came up and he saw the door was open. He said, are you still in there? And I said, yes, and I can't get out. You locked me in here. And he said, tisk, tisk, tisk. And over he went to the door. He put his hand there in that little porthole to life circle. He went that way toward the door jamb. Click. He opened the door. He opened the door. He opened the door. And he found his wife sitting on the toilet in her underwear with a triangle paper hat taped to her head, reading the newspaper. Now, I would like to tell you my interpretation of the look on his face. It was, oh my God, Here I'm seeing the vision of the cover girl of the AARP edition of the Victoria's Secret's catalog. However, his interpretation was a little different. It was, "Good God, Linda, what happened to you?" And I just simply said, "A series of unfortunate events. Everything that's happened up until now is a story." Thank you.
Oh my, what wonderful visuals. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Linda. And now I'll turn it over to Mindy, who is going to introduce our next storyteller from San Diego.
Hello, my name is Fred, and I'll be introducing Mindy because she is the next storyteller. And so Mindy and I go back probably about 10 years in Storytellers of San Diego that we've known each other. And I have to say that Mindy is probably the most artistic person that I know. Besides being a storyteller, she also is a puppeteer in the Puppeteers Guild here in San Diego.
Ooh.
And the reason I say most artistic and creative is because Mindy has, when she does puppeteering shows, she actually takes human interest stories and writes them herself. Not only that, usually on socially conscious issues, she has a great love of humanity and building community among people, and takes these stories and puts them into her art. She even makes the puppets that are in these puppet shows that she does. Today, she's here to tell you a story, however. And when Mindy tells you a story, you're not only hearing her voice, she's telling the story with her body, her mind, her heart, and her soul. And so, in other words, when Mindy tells you a story, she's telling it with her whole being. So please help me in welcoming Mindy Donner.
Wow. Thank you, Fred. A story from ancient Persia. I told my mother goodbye. My surrogate mother, but the only mother that I remember. She is a Simurgh, mythical bird, protectorate of the Persian people. I was alone, naked, abandoned some 16 years ago by my father because of my white hair. The Simurgh picked me up, brought me to her nest where she nursed me like a mother bat and enfolded her wings around us fledglings. My father, the great hero Sam, favorite of the Shah, came to reclaim me. And with him I will go. My son Zal came back with me to the palace in Persia. Oh, Zal, so eloquent, having been taught the speech of humans by the Simurgh. And he learned everything so quickly that I felt very confident to leave him as the head administrator of all my many lands while I went off to another military campaign. And all the elders looked up to Zal. He was so competent. He knew how to mete out justice. Now, like most young men, he wanted to go off on an adventure and see a little bit of the world. And so he went to Kabul. He went to the palace where he was received with all the acclaim of the hero that I was, the hero's son. Now, the ruler Mirab welcomed him, and there were many entertainments that night. And they drank a little, they drank a lot, and perhaps too much for Zal. And a chieftain sitting nearby whispered in his ear, "Zal, there is a priceless moon in this palace. Her name, Her name is Princess Rudaba. You must see her. So after that, Zal could think of nothing else but the name Rudaba. He was falling in love, sight unseen. And a rather parallel situation was unfolding in the king's chambers. He was with his queen, Sindukt, and Rudaba was there too. And he explained that Zal, son of Sam, was their palace guest. Sindukt was a little concerned. The son of Sam? Why, Sam could crush Kabul like a straw in his hand. And this Zal, what of him? A nursling from a bird? Oh, Mirab said that he was eloquent and intelligent and had so many sterling qualities. And then he began to describe Zal in physical terms. Now it is said in the East that one never describes a man's beauty in front of a woman because a woman will go off in restless pursuit and without reason. Now, ladies, you can discuss that in the chat if you like. Well, Rudaba heard this and she started chanting the name Zal, Zal, Zal all night. And in the morning, she told her ladies, she said, I must have Zal. I can neither eat nor sleep. I am sure I will never eat again. He must be mine. Oh, they tried to dissuade her, but they arranged a tryst. And so this little tete-a-tete was happening, of course, under cover of darkness, and it involved Zal with a lariat, and he lassoed a balustrade, and then he pulled himself up, and she leaned down, and she said, climb up to my heart, Zal, and he did. There was speechless joy between them. And in the morning, the ladies ushered him out the first rays of dawn. Well, he went straight to his father to ask his father's permission to marry her. First, Zal frowned. Then he remembered his oath to take care of his son. And then Zal confronted him. Sam, my father, great hero, you abandoned me on a mountain, naked and alone. Never did I feel the tender arms of my birth mother around me. You took my love, you took my childhood. Sam was very moved, and he gave his permission. But then there was the matter of this Shah giving permission, no small matter. Well, Rudaba and Zal had a go-between, an elder woman, and she was caught by Queen Sindukt with something up her sleeve. I mean, literally up her sleeve. She had presents from Zal to Rudaba, and they fell out. Well, then she asked for a confession from her daughter. Oh, Rudaba came and she confessed, yes, she had a lover. When she said it was Zal, her mother was in despair. Oh, no, the Shah will crush us by means of Sam. Well, then the whole intrigue started back and forth. Now, at this point, Sam went to the Shah of Persia himself. Now, after all, he was a favorite. And at the end of a successful visit, he mentioned the possible marriage of Rudaba to his son Zal. Oh, the Shah would not hear of it. The Shah was furious. He tasked Sam to burn the palace in Kabul to the ground and to annihilate the royal family. Well, word of this news reached the court of Kabul. And there was King Mirab thinking about his private and public options. And the one public option he could think of to save his skin was to publicly execute Rudaba and his queen. Well, now, if, as Rudaba said, Sam acquiesced to this match, that could be a bit awkward. So then Queen Sindukt made a proposal. Why do we not buy our lives? Who would dare? I would dare. Give me the key to your treasury. And she took out 300,000 pieces of gold, jewels, 60 slaves, camels, and 6 elephants. And she changed her outfit to resemble that of a warrior of Iran. She had baggy pants and a long tunic belted and a helmet. She rode off looking like a young paladin, and she reached the palace at Seistan, Persia, and charged in to see Sam herself. She took off her helmet and shook out her shining black hair. Sam, accept our treasures. And then she kissed the ground out of respect. Well, Sam wasn't sure if he would commit himself this way, but he didn't want to disrespect Zal. He wasn't quite sure. And then she continued, why do you want to kill the great Mihrab? It is true that these children met in his palace. However, he has been weeping blood ever since. And surely you don't want to kill this innocent great warrior. Perhaps are you the wife of Mihrab? She shot back. I will tell you my true identity, but first you must promise not to harm me nor my family. He liked a quick retort and wit. He put out his hand. She grabbed it. They shook hands. She fell to the ground and kissed the earth again, this time for gratitude. There was the matter of the Shah. And so Sam wrote a long letter, and he said in his letter, it would be better for him to burn down the palace of the Shah of Persia than to lay waste to the palace in Kabul. He sent the letter with Zal, who had never met the Shah. Well, the Shah was impressed by Zal, everyone was, and he put him to tests of competency and opaque riddles with a philosophical answer and such. And of course, Zal passed all of these examinations with flying colors. And in the end, the Shah gave his permission. A great wedding was held. It lasted 4 weeks. And then Rudaba came to Persia and sat on the ivory throne with Zal, and they ruled together. Soon she became pregnant. Her body got larger and larger, but 9 months came and went, and she did not deliver a baby. And then finally she went into labor. Her screams rent the air of the palace. The baby did not come. It was too big for her. And so Zal told Sindukt to bring the censer and light a fire. And he took the feather that was given to him by his mother Simurg, and he burned it. And she came. This is my counsel. Bring the finest physician with a blue steel dagger. He is to put it in the waist of your queen and cut downward. Put his hands in, turn the baby's head towards the cut and lift the baby out. Sew her up and put the juices of these herbs on the cut. Bind her, and after a day and night of sleep, she will be able to hold the baby at her breast. This was true, and Rudaba named her son Rustam, meaning I have borne fruit. And this Rustam grew so fast and so strong, it took the milk of 20 nurses to satisfy his hunger. And then they had sent for Sam to come meet his grandchild. By then, the child was so strong that this child could balance on his own little gold throne atop an elephant with Mirab on one side and Zal on the other side. And Sam got off his horse and gave him the honor of walking on foot to him and said, Paladin, grow in strength, and may your courage be that of the lion. Astonishingly, the boy spoke. Oh, great Paladin, I take my courage from my grandfather Sam, who is a lion among men. Thank you.
Wow, what an unusual story. I've never heard anything like that. Thank you, Mindy. Wow, I am just learning so much today and so enjoying listening to all our wonderful storytellers. Our next storyteller from Sacramento is none other than Joyce Orman. Now, Joyce grew up on a farm along the Sacramento River some 80 plus years ago with an, as she calls it, with an environment of stories, sticky mud, talking animals, vicious turkeys, cranky chickens, magical playmates of creatures great and small. And also with a group of fun-believing adults who insisted that goats don't speak English. Today, Joyce would like to share a century-old myth. But at the same time, I also asked Joyce if she had something unusual to share. And boy, did she. Joyce is a certified scuba and skin diver. And she got certified clear back in the 1960s. But back then, women weren't supposed to be into skin diving and scuba diving. She had trouble even finding those diving suits to have one made for a woman. But besides that, she couldn't find any males that would allow her to go diving in the ocean. It took her a long time to finally get accepted as a certified scuba diver. But today she's going to share a story with us. It's called The Silky Wife. The Silky Wife, Joyce Orman.
Thank you. Well, Daniel sat in the moonlight, full moon, rocking, thinking of his flight, watching the waves come in. He was so lonely since his parents had passed away a few years ago. Oh, he wanted a wife. Well, while watching the waves, he fell asleep. When he opened, he couldn't believe his eyes. He looked down on the beach below. There were 4 or 5, maybe even 6 beautiful young lassies in there all together with long flowing hair. Oh, they were beautiful. And he watched. Where could they come from? Who were they? Then they ran, got their robes, ran to the edge of the sea, wrapped themselves in their robes, and they turned into seals. and they dove right into the surf. He must be hallucinating. Now, he'd heard stories of the Silkies from his grandmother and his great-grandmother and even his mother, but he didn't really believe they were real. So every full moon, month after month after month, he watched, but they didn't come back. So one day, when he was out fishing, he stayed out late because of the moon. It was a bright moon, and as he was rowing into shore, as he came over the crest of a wave, he looked toward the beach, and there they were. Well, he quickly diverted to the other cove, went carefully, crawling quietly through the rocks. And he put his hand on a rock, and it wasn't rough, it was smooth, like a sealskin. Well, he grabbed that sealskin, ran back, hit it, and then came back a little faster this time, and he went right out and walked out on the sand. Well, immediately they grabbed their skins, they ran to the, and they dove into the surf. All the seals gone, except for one. One beautiful young lassie was running, looking for what she couldn't find. I have what you're looking for. She ran up to him. Please, sir, give me my skin. I can't go back to the sea without my skin. I know, but I need a wife, and you must stay, and I will make you my wife. No, you won't. You can stop me from going back to the sea, but you can't make me be your wife. You have to have my consent. Well, what are you going to do about it? Oh, no. I know. I will consent to be your wife if you will make 3 promises. 1, you will keep my skin clean, oiled, and in perfect condition. 2, I will stay for 25 years, but after 25 years, when I want my skin, you will give it to me, and I will go back to the sea. And 3, when I go back to the sea, I will take a piece of your heart with me. Okay, I'll be a good husband. I'll be fair, be kind, give you everything you want except your skin. And so the Silky wife took the name of Catherine, and she and Daniel were married, and they lived happily. In fact, more than happily. They fell deeply in love. They went for years. Well, that union brought 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. The sons trained with their father fishing, and the daughter helped her mother in the house, in the garden, and especially drying fish on the sand in the cove. Well, they often took breaks sitting on the sand, and they talked and talked. And Mary, that's the daughter, noticed that her mother had a longing in her eye when she looked at the ocean and out into the sea, but she didn't think anything of it. One day, as Mary grew older, she was over in the neighboring cove gathering seashells and driftwood after a storm. Now, she wasn't supposed to be there. When she saw her father coming, she ducked down behind the boulder. And he came in, and he didn't look for her at all. He went over, to some rocks, removed some rocks, took out a bundle, opened it up, spread out a beautiful seal skin, and he combed it and brushed it and oiled it, and then he rolled it back up. Then he rolled it in an oilcloth, tied it carefully, put it back in the crevice, and returned the rocks. Now, he left. Mary didn't tell anyone because, well, she wasn't supposed to be there, and she wouldn't have seen it if she was not where she wasn't supposed to be. So time went on, and Mary pretty much forgot about it. And one day, as they finished drying the fish and they went and sat on the sand, Mary noticed that this time Kathleen wasn't just looking sad. She actually had tears running down her cheeks. Mother, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Oh, my darling Mary, I love you and your father and your brothers and my life here, but it's past time. It's past time that I go back to the sea. Let me tell you a story. And so she told Mary about the silkies. And then she said to Mary, Mary, my love, I am a silky, and it's past time to retrieve my skin and return to the sea. Mother, wait! And Mary ran as fast as she could to the cave, pulled the rocks out, grabbed the bundle, ran back to her mother and said, Mother, is this what you need? And her mother unwrapped, laid out the skin. Oh, it's beautiful, as good as the day I took it off. And now it's time for me to go. She walked down to the edge of the sea, and she looked back at Mary, and her heart was heavy. But just as she almost got her skin off, Mary said, Mother, wait, please, don't. No, I too want to go to the sea. I want to go with you, Mother. Please, take me with you. Kathleen was now a seal, held her flipper out to her daughter. Mary took hold of the flipper, and they turned and they walked into the sea and dove, and they swam out and swam around Daniel's boat. And Daniel looked down at the first seal. When she looked up at him and he looked in her eyes, he felt his heart beginning to swell, for he knew it was Kathleen, and he knew she was going back to the sea. But then a second seal came up, and when he looked in her eyes, he saw Mary, and now his heart was getting larger and larger, and it was breaking apart. And as the seals swam out into the open ocean, Daniel felt a piece of his heart rip and go with them forever. Goodbye, my loves. Thank you.
Nope. Thank you, Joyce, for that terrific interpretation of that wonderful story, The Silky Wife. I am now going to turn control of our program back to Ed. I believe Ed is going to be wrapping this all up. Ed, you're
Well,
on.
Actually, just a moment. I'm going
Oh,
to
there's one
present
more story.
our last but not least San Diego storyteller, the inimitable Aunt Leanne. And Aunt Leanne is the winner of the 2020 NSN Story Slam. And Aunt Leanne is a storyteller, of course, and an actor. She's an herbal healer and a lifelong learner. And she is so happy and honored to be here tonight for our storytelling celebration and to share her original Greek myth with us all. Thank you, Aunt Leanne.
Thank you, Mindy. Dimitra was packing. There was so much less in the carry sack than she thought there would be after 53 years. But then again, what else would she take? She kissed her daughter, the hollow-eyed husk of what had been her daughter, goodbye, and took one more look at the vase that had been her grandmother's on the mantle. Painted with black ink were 3 goddesses, all graceful, all young, but that one on the end, with the dark curls over the smooth skin and the flashing eyes. Irene, goddess of peace, I will have answers from you. And she walked out the door. She began her long, long journey. When her husband had signed up for the army, Dimitra had been proud and sad to see him go. And when their oldest had followed in his father's footsteps, and neither of them came back, she fought like hell to keep her youngest home and out of the army. But the war came to them. Her daughter, pregnant, had seen her own husband cut down, and she had watched her son be enslaved by the enemy and taken away. I will have answers from the goddess of peace. She walked for a very, very long time. And most of the beginning of that journey was in lands that had been devastated by war, the people broken with strife. Eventually, she got further out into the country where the people were fewer. And finally, she was at the foot of the mountain. And there was a fountain with a young girl sitting beside it, her blonde hair falling like a curtain over her face. She was dipping the cup in the fountain. Mother, good mother, did you want a sip? Dimitra was dazzled by the girl's smile in the summer sun. You are not the one I seek, but I know you. Perhaps I could help you? I am Eunomia. I am the goddess of good order. Stay here with me and work to put things back the way they should be. No. Dimitra's mind was filled for a moment with temptation. Neighbors working with neighbors, good laws in the land. But she remembered in her own lifetime how things had changed, and neighbor against neighbor, and war, and soldiers, and death. No, I must see your sister. I need answers. Well, my sisters live up the mountain, but the nearest is at least a season. Be careful, Dimitra. As summer turns to fall, the road will grow treacherous. as the storms come. And Demetra continued on her way. And as summer turned to fall, the storms did start to come. And one night, just before sunset, there was a terrible storm brewing. The wind and the rain and the lightning and the thunder. And just before sunset, there was a flash, and she saw a young woman with dark brown hair on the path ahead of her. And in the next flash, the girl was grabbing her hand and yanking her off of the path, and crack, boom! A branch twice Demetra's size fell onto the path where she had been standing just a moment before. Oh, thank you, thank you. But the girl continued to tug her along the creek to a cave for shelter. There was a fire already burning to welcome them in, and Demetra saw her first good look at the girl's face in the firelight. You. I know you. But you are not the one I seek. Demetra, come in and rest. And Demetra lay down, and her mind was filled with dreams. Dreams of victory, her country's victory over their enemies, her husband, her sons. And then justice for them. But as she walked, she found herself in amongst the enemy. And those mothers were crying for their husbands, their daughters, their babies, their sons. When Demetra opened her eyes, the goddess was watching her intently. So tell me, what is your name? Is it Nike, goddess of victory, or Dike, goddess of justice? I swear some days I do not know myself. But couldn't you stay here with me, Demetra, and work for such things? No. I must find your sister, and I must have answers. Very well. But Demetra, my sister, is at least a season up the mountain, and no mere mortal can walk for long in the mountains of this, in the winter in this mountain. We shall see. And Demetra continued climbing the mountain. And the winter did come, and the snow and the ice. And soon she knew she would be able to go no farther. There was one river that had not quite iced over, and she followed its song to a house. There was, the door was not barred and the walls were sound. And when she went inside, it was obvious that no one had lived there in a very long time. She settled in for the winter, foraging in the land surrounding it for fuel and food every day. And at night, she would sit next to the fire and she would think about the questions to ask Irene. How? Why? When? One morning she woke up and the thaw had come. The river had begun its song again, and as she went out to it, she saw that it fed a small waterfall and went down into a large, placid lake. Oh, the beauty of it took her breath away. And as a bird began to sing on a nearby branch, her heart cracked open and tears streamed down her face. And there, out on the lake, there was a boat. Demetra ran down to the lake shore just as the rower brought the boat to land and tossed her dark curls over her smooth shoulder. I have questions for you, and I demand answers. How can you allow war in this world? How can you allow the weapons that hurt people? How can you allow such strife and call yourself the goddess of peace? Large, dark eyes widened with compassion. Oh, Demetra, I am not Zeus or Ares or Athena to command a people, and even they cannot command them all. I am but a demigoddess. But for those who seek me, for those who wish to work for justice and look for peace, I can show them a place like this and give them a place like this. And she touched the chest of Demetra right over her heart. And Demetra was filled with such peace and such purpose. She turned to go back down the mountain to work for good order and justice and peace. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aunt Leanne.
Okay, what an amazing evening of storytellers, and we appreciate all you listeners who were able to hang in there with us for all of these amazing stories. In the chat room, there, Shags has posted the other events that are going on, the other 3 celebrations. There's one at 7 o'clock tonight. There's 2 tomorrow. So if you're interested in hearing more interesting and engaging storytellers or paired storytelling with different groups, please take a look at that and join in.
And if you can't, we'll have them posted on our YouTube channel.
Yes, our YouTube channel also, right? And you're able to, Shag, can you tell everyone when they could look at any of the recordings on our YouTube channel?
It takes a little bit of time for them to be ready, and then I upload them. So this one probably by tonight.
Great.
And all the others are up there. Just go to our webpage, storysac.org, and follow the link. Subscribe, and you'll get updates for when everything is available.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
And then we hope that many of you actually join Storytelling Association of California. You can join for a year. The fee is $25. You can join for 2 years at
30.
I think 35. Am I wrong, Shay?
Yeah, it's 30 and 30, and I don't know what 2 years is.
Okay,
30 for 1 year.
30 for 1 year. So please think about joining Zach, and you'll get all kinds of information about events that are coming up. So once again, thank all the listeners, thank all the tellers. We appreciate you coming. And now we are going to sign off, but we're going to leave it open for the storytellers if you want to just get together and chat a little bit about how everything went for you today.
Sounds great. I'll stop the recording now.
Okay, thank you, Shags.
I can start a new one.